Trump reaches 200 days in office, and the numbers are drawing significant attention. His approval rating has dropped to 40%, a level often associated with second-term lows in historical comparisons. Polls indicate growing skepticism from both moderates and core supporters, with concerns spanning economic management, international relations, and leadership style. The global economy is already feeling the ripple effects of U.S. policy moves. Trade uncertainty, market volatility, and investment hesitation have increased since the introduction of new reciprocal tariffs targeting countries with large trade surpluses and political disagreements. The International Monetary Fund chief economist warned that such policies are like throwing sand in the wheels of the global economy. Markets are closely monitoring the U.S. as these decisions have potential consequences far beyond national borders, influencing global trade currency valuation and investor sentiment. Domestically, the impact is palpable. Consumer prices are rising, businesses are adjusting to higher import costs, and ordinary households are experiencing tangible economic strain. Meanwhile, the White House emphasizes that the tariffs are designed to protect American industry, reduce trade deficits, and assert a stronger bargaining position on the world stage. In this video, we'll break down the story in 5 slides: the 200-day context and approval ratings, the new tariff policy, international reactions, domestic impact, and a reflective summary on the broader economic and political consequences. Each slide will examine facts, data, expert commentary, and real-world examples, giving viewers a clear understanding of the unfolding situation and its significance. At the 200-day mark, President Trump's administration is at a pivotal point. A 40% approval rating signals not only public disapproval, but also a growing challenge for implementing domestic and foreign policy initiatives. Historical trends suggest that second-term presidents often experience dips in approval due to economic pressures, contentious policies, or partisan conflict, and Trump's trajectory appears consistent with these patterns. The administration faces multiple pressures. Economic concerns dominate domestic opinion, with household budgets affected by inflation, energy costs, and rising consumer prices. Beyond the U.S., markets are reacting to policy unpredictability, particularly around trade, tariffs, and international relations. Uncertainty has a real cost. Businesses delay investment, credit markets tighten, and consumers may postpone major purchases. The IMF chief economist's warning that these policies are like throwing sand in the wheels of the global economy underscores the interconnectedness of global finance and trade. Policy shifts in the U.S. affect supply chains in Asia, Europe, and Latin America, and can influence commodity pricing, stock markets, and even emerging economies. Trump's presidency, like any administration, is balancing competing priorities. On one hand, there is a focus on reducing the trade deficit and asserting national economic interests. On the other, there is growing concern that aggressive policies may backfire, causing inflationary pressures domestically while straining alliances and diplomatic ties abroad. Public opinion reflects these tensions. Surveys suggest that while a core segment of voters supports the administration's assertive trade stance, a growing number of Americans express concern about long-term economic stability, job security, and consumer costs. Businesses echo these concerns, highlighting that policy uncertainty can disrupt operations, particularly for multinational companies reliant on imports and exports. In short, the 200-day milestone is more than a symbolic checkpoint. It reflects a moment of economic, political, and diplomatic tension, where policy decisions reverberate across global markets and everyday American lives. The next 100 days could either stabilize or escalate these pressures depending on legislative actions, international negotiations, and domestic economic trends. A central element of the administration's policy over these 200 days is the introduction of reciprocal tariffs. These tariffs target countries with significant trade surpluses with the U.S., as well as nations perceived as politically adversarial. Canada faces a new 35% tariff on select imports, including timber, steel, and agricultural goods. Brazil is subject to 50% tariffs on major exports such as soybeans, meat, and manufactured products. Other countries, including Japan and the EU, have been impacted with tariffs that sometimes exceed prior trade agreements, signaling a departure from negotiated terms. The official justification is to reduce the U.S. trade deficit, improve domestic industrial competitiveness, and assert a stronger bargaining position in trade negotiations. Proponents argue that these tariffs incentivize foreign nations to engage in fair trade practices, potentially creating long-term benefits for American manufacturers and workers. However, the economic reality is complex. Importers face higher operational costs, which are often passed on to consumers. Supply chains become more fragile, particularly for industries dependent on specialized components from affected countries. The policy also introduces uncertainty in contract pricing, inventory management, and long-term planning. Critics contend that these tariffs are politically motivated, aimed at pressuring governments rather than fostering sustainable economic growth. The risk of retaliatory measures from affected countries is high, potentially escalating into broader trade conflicts or a trade war. Already, stock market volatility reflects investor concerns, with sectors like automotive, electronics, and agriculture experiencing noticeable fluctuations. The reciprocal tariff policy is therefore a high-stakes gamble. While designed to protect U.S. economic interests, it may simultaneously create short-term inflationary pressures, reduce consumer purchasing power, and strain international relations. Policymakers must carefully weigh the potential benefits against the real costs to American households and businesses. The international response to these tariffs has been swift and critical. Canada and Brazil have filed formal protests, emphasizing that the measures disproportionately impact their exporters and violate established trade norms. Canadian officials have expressed concern over the potential disruption of cross-border commerce, particularly in sectors like timber, dairy, and steel. Japan and the EU have also voiced objections. Japan, in particular, is facing tariffs higher than previously agreed in trade treaties, raising legal and diplomatic questions. EU officials have reiterated that fair and transparent trade rules are essential to maintaining cooperative relationships, warning that unilateral actions can erode trust and stability in global commerce. The broader global community is watching closely. Economists warn that retaliatory tariffs could trigger a cycle of escalating trade restrictions, affecting not just the U.S. and targeted countries, but also third-party economies linked through complex supply chains. Multinational corporations may redirect investments, adjust sourcing strategies, and hedge against currency volatility. Political leaders and trade ministers are increasingly asking whether these measures align with the principles of fair trade, mutual benefit, and rule-based commerce. The concern is not only economic, but also geopolitical. Strained trade relationships can affect alliances, cooperation on security and climate issues, and participation in international organizations. Ultimately, this slide highlights that tariffs are not isolated domestic policies. They carry global implications. Decisions made in Washington reverberate through capitals worldwide, influencing economic stability, diplomatic relations, and even public sentiment in affected countries. While the tariffs are intended to target foreign exporters, the effects on the U.S. economy and households are immediate and measurable. Companies importing goods such as electronics, vehicles, agricultural products, and raw materials face higher costs. Many pass these costs to consumers, driving up prices across multiple sectors. Analysts estimate that the average U.S. household may pay roughly $2,400 more per year due to increased tariffs, affecting everything from groceries to household electronics. Market confidence is shaken, leading to slower investment, cautious hiring, and delayed expansion plans, particularly among small and medium-sized businesses that have less financial flexibility to absorb additional costs. Industries reliant on global supply chains, including technology, automotive, and retail, are under particular strain. Businesses must navigate complex pricing decisions, renegotiate contracts, and consider alternative sourcing, all while remaining competitive. These operational challenges trickle down to employees, consumers, and investors alike. Beyond economics, there is a political impact. Ordinary Americans experience the tangible consequences of policy decisions: higher costs, reduced disposable income, and uncertainty about the future. These effects influence public perception of the administration and underscore the interconnectedness of domestic and international economic policy. In essence, the tariff measures create a double-edged sword. While intended to assert leverage abroad, they also impose direct costs on U.S. citizens and businesses, demonstrating the complex trade-offs inherent in economic policymaking. In summary, the introduction of reciprocal tariffs after 200 days in office illustrates the complex balance between domestic priorities and international obligations. Tariffs aimed at foreign exporters inevitably raise costs for American consumers, affecting household budgets, retail pricing, and overall cost of living. Businesses navigating disrupted supply chains face operational and financial challenges, impacting employment, production, and investment decisions. Globally, trade partners view these measures with skepticism, raising questions about fairness, adherence to agreements, and the potential for retaliatory measures. The political ramifications are equally significant. With an approval rating at 40%, public opinion reflects concern over policy effectiveness, economic impact, and leadership choices. As tariffs continue to influence both domestic and international markets, debates over the true costs of the trade war, from economic stability to global trust, are likely to intensify. Ultimately, the situation underscores a fundamental principle. Economic policies, especially trade measures, have consequences that extend far beyond the policymaker's intentions. Every decision carries trade-offs, and in this case, the costs are felt not only by foreign exporters, but also by ordinary American households, businesses, and the broader economy. This story provides a clear lesson in policy complexity, international interdependence, and the tangible effects of economic decisions on daily life, illustrating why careful analysis and consideration are critical in shaping trade and fiscal strategies.